Ladies and gents, welcome.
Episode 10. Who would have thought we would have made it here, Speed?
I mean, double digits is so significant, man.
It's huge. It's huge, bro.
I can feel an Oscar acceptance speech coming along.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just fantastic. Coming off the back of a huge episode last week. Really enjoyed it. Had a great time, and I am absolutely fizzing for tonight's guest.
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you haven't worked out yet, you know, I'm Speedy. This is sat here with Fog. We are the Beccs Rugby Pod. Really happy to have you here. Like you said, last week so successful, but this week we've got an absolute clanger. I would say one for all parties.
Yeah, not just the purists, but someone who is, you know, widely respected by everyone he ever meets, I would say.
Yeah.
So
unforgettable.
So
distinct. I mean,
and often you want to tap into the brain of, you know, just chewing the fat with someone who's been around the block multiple times.
Yeah.
So excited.
I mean, you know, you like to think there's every one of these guys. I mean, although we think our one is the most special, you like to think there's one of these guys at every good rugby club.
I would say there is. There has to be. Has to be.
A guy that is pushing 50, has played at every level of the club, got a kid at the club, but also could probably do a job for the ones if needed.
I'd back him too, definitely.
Yeah.
And this is, I think you've got to remember, this is probably one of the only people I've ever known in my lifetime to turn up to training wearing shorts and tracksuit bottoms at the same time.
I mean, him and Paul
Fantastic.
Russell, I don't know anyone else other than that.
No, absolutely not.
Vintage swagger.
Absolutely not.
I mean,
exactly. So excited.
What do you reckon?
So excited.
What do you reckon? Should we get him in?
Let's get him in. Come on.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, he said he's ready and raring to go. We'll give him, you know, given his advanced stage, we'll give him 10, 15 seconds to, you know, we've had a trial run. He knows what he's doing.
To really announce himself on.
Here we go. Here we go. Here he is, the one and only.
Hey.
Here we go.
How you doing, boys?
Mister.
We are very well, Dave. All the better for seeing you.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how much of an honour this is. I feel like I'm invited onto my first television experience, radio programme. It's lovely.
Mr. Sweeting, the honour is all ours.
Without
Truly. I mean, we're just to get to spend an hour with you. Oh, it's just fantastic. We're very excited. In case you didn't know that already, we are overly excited.
I love you all, you know that.
Yeah, we've got a lot of love for you, sir. We've got a lot of love for you. Yeah, so just to... Oh, go on.
Tell you what, I'm more nervous now than I am for any rugby match I've played.
Because it's all about you now, Sweets. You ain't got 14 other blokes to carry you.
Yeah, Sweets.
And carry me, they do.
Sweets, you can't get subbed off after 50 on this podcast. But very excited. I mean, ladies and gents, you know, I'm very doubtful that there is a person that exists in our fantastic clubhouse that doesn't know this beautiful, beautiful gentleman. So, just for our Speed, what could you say about this man?
Well, you know, I was going to wait until he spoke a bit about, you know, his time at HSBC, and I was going to talk about some anecdotal stuff that
Yeah.
that he probably doesn't know, but he actually had quite a massive influence on the way I play rugby. And my first experiences playing for the first team, because when I used to play against him as a young back rower playing against one of the old style back rowers. I'll get more into that further, but yeah, just an absolute club man. Like we said before, you'd like to think there's every one of these there's one of these blokes at every single rugby club. Just an honour to have him part of the club, and an honour to dig into some of his history today.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Sweeting, or Sweets, or the original Tasty, Health and Tasty, how should we refer to you tonight, sir?
Call me Tasty. I don't want to step into my great legend of a brother's footsteps.
I hope we can go into that as well a little bit soon. So, Sweets.
By the way,
Tasty. Yes. Sorry.
Can I just come back on what Speedy said there as well? It was an honour playing against you guys, and you taught me a lot. In fact, Speedy, you smashed my arse a number of times around the side of that breakdown. I remember that distinctly.
Was that in the bar after the game, or
in the changing room?
Yeah.
No, thanks.
No, but so Tasty. Let's get into it, mate. I mean, can you just sort of give a short intro about who you are, and I guess maybe your Beccs journey, I guess.
Well, you sort of asked me to sort of roles in the club and stuff like that. My primary role has got to be to wind Freddie buckle up. I don't know whether you put that photo on the website of me kicking, but Freddie knows I've got a wonderful boot on me, and it winds him up immensely every time I put boot to ball. So I shall keep trying to do that with him, but it's great. Yeah, so that's my primary role, winding Freddie up, and a number of other players as well. But no, I've got an unwritten, unofficial role in the club, which I've taken on myself, really. I don't think anyone else knows it, but I love rugby. You boys probably know that. And I love the on-field, taking it seriously, and then working hard on the field, and then working hard in the bar afterwards. Rugby's about the whole thing for me. It's not just about when you're at the club, it's life outside the club as well. And my unwritten role I've taken on in the club is to make sure that everyone adheres to that lovely ethos of rugby, shaking hands with the guy that you've just smashed in a game, buy him a pint afterwards, that sort of thing. I love that side of rugby. So, also, I like to make sure that people have fun. I don't want to step on my brother's toes, because I know Sweets is he is the boss when it comes to that. He has been a legend in those sort of terms for years. But I do like to impose the odd rule now and again when my brother's not about, and make sure people like Labar aren't seen tipping and avoiding drinks and things like that, especially tossing. It does happen. But yeah, I love doing that. My official role, if you like, is, I'm on the Beccs planning committee, helping with the build at the moment. I'm a VP, which I'm absolutely honoured to be made a VP. I'm so proud, very proud, and that's something that I hope to put back into the club for years and years. The fun and great times I've got out of it. And also, of course, I want to remind everyone that rugby isn't just a young man's game. Us old codgers can still get out there sometimes, to an extent. But yeah, and also, Fogs, as you know, touring for me is what rugby's all about. It epitomises the year, it caps it off, it brings everyone together, and it gives you something to look forward to the next year. And I'm hopefully, helping you and Freddie and others to organise tours and stuff. So we just want to make everyone else's life fun, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. I think last week it was good that you just finished on that point there about tour, because when we had Broadhurst on last week, we spoke about how much of an impact tours can have, and how certainly it can bring age groups together and when you're underage. But I mean, obviously, I've only been on tour once as a senior, being that last year to Cheltenham, fantastic tour, and going away, maybe not knowing half the people that well, and to come out, it was just an insane experience of and so well managed, of everyone getting on absolutely brilliantly with everyone. And I think touring, as you said, Dave, is such a huge part of grassroots rugby. So yeah, fantastic opportunity for all, and like you said there, hopefully that'll be something that we'll be involved in together for many years to come.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. And I think it is one of the most important things a rugby club can do. And I'm including the younger juniors as well, because right from sort of under 15s onwards, we tried to have tours. Because when you get to that age, you've got work, women, and beer to also think about. Not necessarily in that order, but at the end of the year, just something to bring everyone together and keep them looking forward to the same next year. So
yeah,
I've got a few memories of tour, which I shouldn't repeat here, because I might implicate a few of the younger lads who are still playing for the club on Firth, but I won't.
Good. I'm sure we'll come to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for that. But if we try and go quite back, it's really nice for us to hear about sort of your early beginnings with the club, if you can remember that far back.
Wow. I actually had to try and work out when it was. I'm not very good with dates and things anyway, as Alfie will tell you. But I don't go back right to the beginning, the minis and all that sort of stuff. I joined rugby fairly late, and
Okay.
late being around about when I was 15, 16. Is that year 11 now? Fifth year 11. So it's about 1984 when I came to the club, and that was all because of El Presidente, Mr. Clive Putner. I'd remember having a particularly tough game when I was in the fifth year. I used to play up in the ones, and as lots of people do, for Langley, and I had a really tough game, really hard game at hooker. These big burly props and hooker against me, lots of running. Got into the changing room afterwards. Was really looking forward to doing absolutely nothing Saturday afternoon, and Clive Putner comes into the change room and says, "Sweeting, well, yes, sir. What are you doing at 1:30 this afternoon?" And you know what? I hesitated half a second, and he jumped in and said, "Sparrows Den Corkscrew Hill, you're playing for the fifth." And like, yes, sir. And that's my first introduction to the club, around about 84. And we went off as a young innocent, believe it or not, sweet 15, 16-year-old. We went over to play Croydonians, who at that time were based opposite Croydon Airfield, the public fields up there. And I had a great game running around, and I learnt that I was not the slowest person on the field, as I usually was. So it was really interesting as a youngster coming up. And afterwards, after Barney Rubble tried to take fiver subs off me, and subs were still a fiver then, believe it or not, in 1984, still the same. I remember he got slapped around the head from Fred Tennant. He said, "Schoolboys don't pay." And I got taken under his wing. Nye Davis, a couple of other people like that. Alan Griffiths, old names. Some of the older listeners would recognise. I got bundled into a car, and just between Croydon and the club, which is only a couple of miles, isn't it? 3 pub stops. 3. Now, I was a young lad who, not my capacity for alcohol wasn't particularly brilliant at that time. Got back to the club, and I thought, that's it, my night's finished. Stayed at the club for what seemed like forever. And at the end of the night, and I did put my hand in my pocket once, which was brilliant. And at the end of the night, I remember Fred Tennant coming up to me saying, "Right, you've had a good night. It's the end of your night now. You've got to go home. You can't even speak, let alone walk." So he bundled me into his car, dropped me at home. And I remember the old man opening the door just as he'd finished his dinner. It was about 8:05. I mean, I was in tatters. But I came back every week. I loved it, and I've been there ever since.
And Tasty, what was your old man's reaction to sort of opening the door? Was he all for it, or was he a bit standoffish?
Well, the old man was quite strict in his ways. I love him to death, but he was a footballer through and through. He was
Right.
the HSBC chairman for about 15 years, and he was gutted when me and Brian started playing rugby at Langley. But I remember him looking at Fred Tennant and going, "What state have you got him into?" But it was good.
Quality.
Yeah, been there many a time, and sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes a lot earlier than 8:05.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing I'm amazed at by that was that subs were still £5 back then too.
It was. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Unbelievable. And you got a meal, and in them days, you for that £5, can you imagine how much beer and jugs you would get?
That's what I'm thinking.
If you weren't in Barney Rubble's team, because he would try and run off with all the kitting most of the time, but you know, you would get jugs and jugs, and Joe was great.
Yeah, much better times and much simpler times. So yeah,
Yeah.
Sweets, you mentioned HSBC, which is obviously a club very close to your heart as well. Do you want to kind of expand on how they enter into your kind of playing career?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, in my younger days, I went off and joined the army. So I left the club when I was quite late, actually, around about when I was 22. So in 1990, so I went off, joined the army, and always come back and play for the club in, you know, the 2s, 3s, whatever, in leave and times like that. But at the end of my career, after about 8 years, I came back, and some young, fat, balding guy who pretended to be my younger brother, but obviously looks much older than me, was in my first team spot playing hooker in the first team. So I thought, do I fancy all the hassle of competing for the same position for him? And what it was, I ran off scared, embarrassed to be dropped for him, because I think he's a better hooker in terms of size and strength. But he could never throw the ball in straight. So that's one kind. So anyway,
A bit like our current hooker.
You are?
A bit like our current hooker.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Tom. But yeah, so I got a job for HSBC, and they had soap in the showers. I mean, that just turned me straight away. I mean, you know, the picture's nice anyway, but soap in the shower. And sausage.
I mean, it's unheard of.
Yeah, unbelievable. And well, when I first went there, actually, this is telling you how long ago, they had bloody baths there. Each person had a single bath that you could get into after the game. And they had 3 plunge baths and showers. It was great.
I mean, I love, you know what, Beccs showers definitely aren't the worst, but when you talk about something like that, that is dreamy.
Oh, it was lovely. I'll tell you what, very quick story. My brother and I used to do underwater lengths in those plunge baths when we were about 7 or 8 years old, seeing how many lengths we could do underwater without taking a breath, and then coming up at the end and gasping big gulps of water. This was after 15 teams had been through.
Oh.
The water was black. There were sticking plasters hanging about. Oh, it was awful. Brother used to drink it. He loved it.
Oh,
That doesn't surprise me at all. That says, you know what, it makes sense as to how the two of you are the way you are in a certain way.
it does. But Dave, sorry, Tasty, I can imagine nothing better than sitting in those plunge baths after a long game and just having a few beers. That must honestly be like iconic.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely. It was really nice, and you know, with the opposition as well. It was great. And you know, if you were very crafty, you could also, you know, get a little feel with your toes under the water now and again. But if you wanted to get your own back on someone who'd done the dirty on you on the park, no, it was great fun. Good fun. unfortunately, health and safety in this new world has put an end to all of that, hasn't it?
Yeah. Classic millennials ruining everything.
Fog, I don't know if you were playing for the ones at the time. In fact, I'm almost positive you weren't because I was quite young at the time. But I remember we had a final game in, I think it was Kent 1, and we went, Ashford had already won the league, and we went over there, away to Ashford, which is always, I'm sure you can.
I think that was the year before I played, bro, yeah.
Yeah. We went over to Ashford. They'd already won the league, and they absolutely humped us. They used to have those two props that were just like horrendous people, but like so effective. Yeah. And yeah, I just remember it was like so demoralising leaving the pitch. And I don't know if you two have ever been there and seen like the big baths they had. I mean, they look disgusting, like all kinds of like weird colours and marks. But you know, the whole team was sat across these two baths celebrating with loads of champagne. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, yeah, they kind of smashed that a bit. You know, I would not mind that at all. Like, why can't Beccs get some baths?
Because a lot of clubs still have them, like Elanians still have them inside the clubhouse, and I'm pretty sure the last time we played there, which was away at the end of last season, there was people inside them. So, I mean, I just say it shouldn't be in use anymore. Is that right?
Mm. Well, I don't know about that, but I think it's choice that the clubs have decided not to use them. But yeah, you're right. Elanians have got one, and Darts were one of the last teams to still have one, but they got rid of that years ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind them.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other areas of health and safety. You know, I don't want to get my horse, but some of the rules in rugby these days. I mean, I remember. I mean, people like Sean Jones and Ian Anderson and all those sort of people will completely agree with what I'm saying. There are times when you were playing back row or hooker, in the showers, you compare your opposite number, and if you didn't have more stud marks on your back than they did, they'd beaten you. You know, they'd had a better game than you. And that was how it was compared. It was like,
yeah.
Can you imagine?
I think it's good that.
No, go on.
I think it's good that, you know, that's one rule that's not bad, is rucking. I think they could bring rucking back still, even for youngsters. I agree about the head tackles and neck tackles, the competing for the ball in the air, maybe it's a bit dangerous. But, you know, at our level, I don't think rucking is going to cause that many problems, particularly if the ref's good. He just sends anyone. We didn't stamp. Occasionally it happened and the guy was sent off, but that's no different to punching now. Someone's sent off.
Fair.
Made the game quicker. The game was quicker.
Yeah.
In my view.
I'd have to agree with you on that. I was just going to say, after you mentioned a couple of names, I was just thinking how, like, in terms of an accumulation of bans, would be received by someone like Sean Jones and someone like Angry in this day and age. I feel like they'd missed 3/4 of the season, each of them. Yeah,
they would. And Gary Stokes and people like that, you know, they wouldn't be playing half the season, would they?
Yeah, they're good. But yeah, no. So just touching back on the stuff of HSBC, I can remember being a young back rower, just kind of busted onto the first team scene, just thinking I was the absolute dogs. And I think it was the first time I played against HSBC, and you know, because I met your brother, and I knew your brother quite well before I'd met you, Dave. And you know, I think him, Mike O'Hare, a couple of other people, they were like, "Oh, you know, your opposite man today's he's Sweets' brother." And he said, "Oh," and I said, "Oh," and I remember, I think I looked at you warming up, and I thought, "Oh, he doesn't look like I should be kind of scared." And he was like, just be careful, you know, he's fit as a fiddle and he's been playing a while. And I can remember there was a couple of times, you know, I ran into contact thinking, right, I'm going to target him. And without even knowing it, like getting the ball stripped off me a couple of times, just like getting undone by these little tricks where, you know, you just really showed your experience really well. And I remember that really kind of centered me in a way when I first started playing, because it checked my ego. And it made me realise that just because I was young and fit and thought I was the best, it didn't convert into, you know, what is necessary for men's rugby. And it wasn't until we asked you to come on this pod that I actually kind of like looked back, I thought about it, and I was like, oh, you know what, like actually playing against at the time of someone who I thought was like the complete opposite of what I was, you know, it really kind of put me in check and actually helped me a lot on my rugby journey, you know, like completely respecting your opposition, and how youth isn't everything, and there's smarter ways to work and operate on a rugby pitch, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dave, that's very, very kind of you, but I'm sure I didn't teach you that much because you know, I was chasing your heels half the time. But no, it was great rivalry for years. I mean, 20 years I played for HSBC, and you know, in those years, I mean, we used to go up and down, didn't we? Particularly you guys, you were going up quite a lot and then down, and you didn't go up like we've done and stay up and then go up again and stay up, which is
yeah.
But so we had a rivalry that went on for years, and it was just great fun playing against you guys. And you taught me a lot too, believe it or not. You know, really good fun, really good fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And do you know what? You're right. Like, in terms of my first few years playing for first team, and with all due respect, you know, to HSBC, obviously it's not the case now because we're in a couple of higher leagues. But you were the main rival. You were the main rivalry. Like, it was very much like a club day when we'd go over to your place, and we were always excited to play on the pitch. But because there was, you know, people like yourself, and it was always a competition of like who would be going up that year and stuff like that. It really was the primary rivalry for the club at the time.
Yeah, and Speed, just to add to that as well. I mean, from the moment I started playing, that sort of was the game every year that you were most excited for, because it had that sort of very authentic, like, derby feel to it. You'd get a load of local people come and watch. Absolute carpet of a pitch, so everyone was buzzing. Great bar after, so it was just always like it was the perfect away day. So yeah, I always loved HSBC, and I think, Speed, you're right. When we were at that level, they were always really, really good games, and like always quite tough, and you know, they were always hard fought contests. So yeah, massive respect.
And the soap. Don't forget the soap in the showers was a big incentive.
The soap,
and the sausage and chips.
Yeah.
Sausage and chips. Sausage and chips.
I always remember the food. The food was solid in the back. We always used to eat and have a couple of drinks in that little room at the back.
Yeah.
And then everyone would come back into the main bar, wouldn't they?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah,
you know, at the risk of sounding like a nosy purist, I feel like those kind of derbies were, you know, like encapsulated everything that was kind of good about our level of rugby. You know, it was properly just ferocious on the pitch. Like, you would hate the opposite man. Like, you know, it really, really like was like destructive and attritional and all that kind of stuff. But you were always like so close after. Like, we've had some really, really good nights out. Like, you know, which started off there, and you know, like being really close with all the opposite players and stuff like that. Like, it really is like, you know, the complete package of what you want, you know, at this kind of level.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's exactly what it's all about, isn't it? You know, work hard on the field and then enjoy it off the field with the same guy that you've been battling the afternoon with physicality.
Yeah.
You know, that's exactly what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were good times, very good times.
Very good times indeed. And Tasty, if you don't mind, I mean, so obviously, as Speed said, you know, HSBC is very close to your heart, but could you just explain your transition? You know, we know that you are in transition, but your transition back to Beccehamians after HSBC, the sort of, you know, what made you return and all that sort of thing, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problems. You had me a bit nervous for a minute. I thought you were after me revealing my LBGT secret. But,
LBGTQ plus now, Mr. Tasty.
Yeah, of course. But I won't mention that transition. Yeah, no, it was great. Basically, you know Alfie, the son. I started coaching at Beccs years ago. Must have been about 15 odd years ago, something like that. You know, I told you I wasn't very good with dates. When Alf was 8, basically. And I continued coaching every Sunday during the season and playing for HSBC. Because Brian kept playing hooker in the first team, and I was always considering coming back, but he kept doing it. So I thought, no, I'm not going to return when he's there. And it got to a time when I'd had my 5th operation to keep playing rugby at HSBC, and the body was wrecked. And I thought, you know what? I normally at the end of the season carry on training all the way through the summer to keep fit. And this time we thought, and you know what? I'm just going to relax. And I put a bit of weight on. And I met one of the HSBC players, and he said to me, so you're giving up? And I said, yeah, I think I'm considering it because, you know, I've had enough. The body is wrecked. And he said, do you realise how old's your son? Because he knew about my son. And I said, well, at the moment, I think he was 15. He said, do you know if you hang on, no, 14 he was, if you hang on 3 years, you can play rugby with him. And that changed the whole perspective. I thought, right, that's it. And I'm hanging on. And I played a rugby season with him. And I have to say, with a lot of the other guys that I was involved in coaching. In fact, one of the proudest moments I've ever had in a Beccs shirt was playing for the Twos about 3 or 4 years ago on the second team pitch, and I had 12 guys playing for me that I'd coached, a lot of them from 8 upwards, and a few others that joined us in the academy, all brilliant guys. The first team were playing on the first team pitch next door. There were 4 guys that I'd coached, one of them who was Alfie. And then who actually is the best hooker in the family, by the way. I have to say that. I've never admitted to him. Oh, done that.
He probably won't listen to this anyway.
He's a student. He's on lockdown in Nottingham.
Oh, God.
And there were 4 guys playing for the Twos away at Dartfordians. So that is what I played rugby for, and that is what I was coaching for. You know, 19 odd guys that were playing senior rugby, and that to me is what it's all about. And a lot of those guys are still around. Some are in White Union, they'll be back. That's what it's about. It's about keeping the club evolving and going and bringing younger players up and giving them time. Yeah, so you know, my transition to the Beccs was, I can play with my son, with all the other guys, and I did. I came back, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to come back and play a couple of games here, a couple of games with HSBC, make a clean break. I'm black and white, as the good lady says. So you know, I came back for good, and actually, I'd wanted to do that for years, because Beccs is a proper rugby club. HSBC was never a proper rugby club. It was a sports club. You know, in the clubhouse, you should have 15 football teams, hockey teams, netball teams. You know, chess, you name it, sailing club.
Yeah.
It wasn't a rugby club, and you couldn't get up to the sort of things that happen in rugby clubs. I mean, certain behaviours that happened at HSBC had people banned for life.
Wow.
And they were far, far less than some of the behaviours I've seen at Beccs, in which you've been patted on the back and given another
I was
pint.
going to say, you know, there's many, many, many things that you can get away with at Beccs before the thought of a ban could even occur.
But the problem was, we had people there working behind the bar staff who were not rugby players, not rugby people, not rugby mentality, and then hit the panic. They hit the panic alarm, which is underneath the bar, and that goes through to security, which and the CEO of the bank gets a copy of that every week. So he was asking questions as to why did you hit the panic alarm, and it just snowballed from there.
Yeah,
so these
I can imagine.
Thankfully, luckily, that well, not luckily, but the guy that did the misdemeanor, and I won't go into any details, but he wasn't an HSBC, didn't work for the bank, but he was told to leave. So if the guy had been an HSBC employee, there's a big risk he lost his job, and that's how serious it was. But it's a great club, but Beccs is a proper rugby club where we look after each other. There's a lot that happens in the club. Not just about rugby. People give jobs to each other. If anyone needs a plumber or a carpenter or You put it around the club. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 names come out. That's what our club's all about. Looking after each other.
And
Love that.
coming full circle back to Beccs, we'd love to have a few words on the testimonial you had, because obviously that is a very exclusive club. I don't know anyone actually within the rugby game that's had a testimonial at club level. So do you want to maybe tell us about that, how that made you feel, and how that kind of day was?
Oh, wow. Now, I've already said about the proudest day of my life. And this was almost the proudest day of my life. It was fantastic. I mean, I wanted to go out with a bang. And I thought the best way to do that, as you said earlier, our rivalry was brilliant over the years, and the games that we played were fantastic. So just put the shout out, you fancy it, and Brian managed your side. And I think you guys had 30 odd players. We had 30 odd players. So it's 60 odd players playing in a game of rugby. And a couple of the guys, do you remember the big strider, the big fly half, the 6 2 tall fly half from Welshman from HSBC, big guy. But anyway, he comes up to me and he says, what sort of game are we expecting here, Dave? And I said, if I know Beccs and they know me, it'll be one of the toughest games of rugby you've had. And that's exactly what I wanted. And he said, he came up to me and he said, after I asked you that question, the first kickoff went and I was looking up and it was coming towards me to catch it. And I was looking up in the air and I could see not 2 or 3, but about 5 players in my face from Beccs. Yeah. And he said the game just went on from there upwards. And it was brilliant. And I think the final score was 32-30. And I missed the conversion. It was great fun. Really
because the Beccs team kind of consisted of people from age groups that you'd coached, some of the people that were playing Beccs first team the same time as you. Is that right? I can remember speaking to someone after that game and someone saying, I think it was Rupert Chitty was still had a bit about him, still knocking people about, and probably still must have been 50 at this point, and still looked the best player on the pitch.
Oh, he was by miles, and I don't think he's even trying that hard. Actually, I think he was trying harder than he wanted to because the game was like that. But he was really good, and there were players like Nelly, Neil.
Yeah, Nelly, of course.
Neil Alcorn, and I played with him a long time ago. And players like him came out of the woodwork, and I mean Nelly was one of the oldest players on there, apart from Dave Turner. I think he looks the oldest by far. I mean, he had his sticks with him, I think, Turner. But Nelly and Turner both played lovely games, and didn't look their age at all. It was great, and Dino was back. It was superb. So lots of players who are even older than me. And guys that I coached, so they were like 17 at the time, I think. I think it was Alfie's first senior game of rugby, and actually he kept turning people over, so I had to give him a few digs to say, stop playing so well, it's my game. But yeah, what a great day, and afterwards was brilliant too. We stayed on long. It's a shame it was a Sunday, actually, because the bar shut at about 10:30 and we were kicked out about 11:30. I can't remember, to be honest with you. It was a wonderful day.
Yeah, I can remember, actually. I think I was late to the game. I missed the game. I think I came down for a few beers after. I remember, I think you were about 45 minutes in. The top was off. You were standing on a chair, drinking all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, what epitomises that game? Messer came out of retirement. He was sort of semi-retirement, wasn't he? He was in and out with his dodgy knee all the time, but he came out and played in that game. And I remember one incident where there was a high ball, and he shouted "mine," and he caught it about 5 times. He was juggling it like a clown, and the rest of the team and HSBC had all stopped. And we're just looking at him laughing. But he caught it eventually and outstripped a couple of people. And, it was game played in great spirits, but really good fun. Really good fun. A good way to good way to go out, if you like, from HSBC.
Yeah.
That is the kind of stuff we love. Well, on that lovely note, ladies and gents, I think we're gonna take a quick break, gather our thoughts, reflect, and thanks so far, Sweet. It's been very, very enjoyable, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes where we'll bring you some more up-to-date analytics on the rugby that's happening at the moment. Cheers, guys. Welcome back, ladies and gents. You are listening and watching the Beccs Rugby Pod. I'm Speedy.
I am Joshua David William Fogarty.
Joshua David William Fogarty, hello. And we are joined once again by our fabulous guest, Mr. Dave Sweetings.
Thanks, guys.
Ali.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So, lads, did we watch any of the Prem semi-finals? Any thoughts on those? Are we surprised that Wasps and Exeter are in the final?
I think he probably would have backed Wasps from the start, but I didn't think it would be such a scoreline. That would be my main takeaway. I mean, I think both games they're pretty high scoring on both sides, but I don't know. Like we spoke about on Saturday, Speed, didn't we? About Bristol had that sort of potential to come out and just be world class, but just sort of didn't really. I know it didn't really get going. There was a lot of. I don't know if you've seen it. There was a lot of ag on the ref's part, saying that he sort of came across a bit impartial. I don't know. Did you pick any of that up?
You know what? I watched the first 60 minutes of that game before I went into work, and I didn't get any kind of gauge.
No, I didn't pick up on it. I think it was a bit of sour grapes, perhaps, at the end.
Yeah, but I mean, me and you both had Bristol to go through in that game. Like you said, we believe they had a bit more of the X factor, a bit more of the big game players, and that it just didn't translate. What do you reckon, Sweets?
I think that's probably their downfall, that they had too many big game players, because I think they tried to run the ball too much, whereas Wasps played more sensible rugby. And that's what won them the game. They played better as a team, they played the territory better, and they did run it occasionally at the right times, but I think Bristol almost tried it too much because they had all these superheroes, and it just didn't work out for them. At other times it does, but on Saturday they're unlucky.
Yeah, I guess you could say Wasps played semi-final footy. They played the occasion, played sensibly, and it proved to be successful.
There was a good article on BBC Sport as well, talking about how I think they were down to 10th at one stage of the season, and how they've gone, up to second, and then obviously straight into a Premiership final, which from them is pretty amazing. So congrats to them, definitely.
Who would you say your player of that game was? Because there's only one name on my mind.
I think there only is one player, Dave. There is only one player, and you've got him down as your Lions bolter.
Lions bolter. You heard it here first. I mean, you didn't hear it first. I'm sure everyone's thinking it. But Jack Willis, mate.
Jackal.
Huh?
The Jackal is what he's been known as, isn't he?
Jackal Willis, mate. He is.
Can you imagine an England back row with Willis 6 and Curry 7? That would just be awesome, wouldn't it?
I mean, also, Underhill in there as well.
Yeah.
Put him eight.
Yeah. And then you think. And then you think there's no Billy Vunipola in there. There's no Ben Earl, no Nathan Hughes, no Sam Simmons for Exeter. Like, it's crazy depth. Crazy.
Sam Simmons is a nominee for European Player of the Year, isn't he?
Yeah,
so
doesn't get a look in for England. Doesn't even get a consideration.
Yeah.
Absolutely
sad, really.
Absolutely crazy. I'll be honest though, I didn't. I was at work during the Exeter Bath game. I didn't catch too much of that. I've seen the highlights. looked like a pretty convincing win. Any more comments on that, gents?
Tasty, you were talking in the break there, weren't you?
Yeah, I think Exeter are so strong, and the reason is it reminds me a bit of New Zealand. They don't play in the same way, but they're as clinical. They don't make that many mistakes. You look, for example, about the number of times they get into the opposition 22 and come away with points. It's virtually 100%.
Yeah.
It's incredible, and particularly if they get within 5 yards out, it's a try. And even if they have to go through 20, 30 phases, it's a try. It's a score, and that's clinical for you, and that's why I think they're gonna win.
Yeah, talking about being clinical, during the highlights, I heard the commentator say a stat that Exeter have brought in this kind of they brought back into circulation this tap and go off a 5 metre penalty. That has led to 17 tries this season for Exeter.
Wow.
And I think Luke Cowan-Dickey's probably scored about 12 of them. He's a freak.
I think the other thing with Exeter as well is that anybody from 1 to 15 looks like they could score in that team.
Yeah.
They were playing on the weekend that Johnny Hill had scored 7 tries in his last 5 games.
Wow.
I mean, the second row, that is just insane.
Yeah.
They'll be bringing back the old Beccs black-white group tap penalty move soon with a hooker at pivot. You watch.
Chuck a little Amelia in there. Yeah, those are the days. Those were the days.
No, but I see Exeter as winning this. It'll be a great game, but I think they'll be clinical enough. I think they'll get a lead and they'll be clinical enough to finish it off. I don't think it's.
And I'll tell you what, they're only going to be confident going into their Heineken Cup final next Saturday as well. I mean, it's Racing, isn't it? They're against.
So, yeah.
They're going to have had now 2 weeks off. So, it's definitely a double, definitely on the cards for them. Very realistic. So,
would love to see.
Their only downfall risk is that they don't recover well from playing Racing. That whereas Wasps have now got 2 weeks to prepare, haven't they? Where they've only got 1 in real terms. So that's their only downfall, I think. But I still think they'll overcome that.
It's the year of the Chief. Got to be.
Perhaps.
What's that, mate?
I was saying, year of the Chief, definitely. I mean, definitely, maybe.
Definitely, maybe.
Don't do that drum noise. It really annoys me. Whatever.
But Tasty, moving on, I realise we've just spent an hour chatting without actually asking you the reason behind the name. Could you explain, please, sir?
Yeah. Well, I've managed for years to convince people and mislead people as to why I'm called Tasty. Let me just. This is a bloke. This has nothing to do with that, actually. This bloke's been carrying me around a bit, and he's always there carrying me about. But sorry, for those of you who can't see, I've just got up and I'm being carried by a leprechaun. But no, Tasty. Really, I've misled people over the years that it was something to do with my presence on the park and skill on the park, but that no one believed that at all. There's a number of other reasons why I'm called Tasty, but I don't want to go into that because I do believe we do have younger viewers on this podcast. But it actually comes back to the 2002 tour to Jersey, where I had a guy who I served in the army with at the time, and Ian Anderson, Angry, kept saying, "Oh, he's a tasty geezer, isn't he? Pretty boy Anderson to not so pretty boy Tasty." And it really annoyed me that whole weekend. And thankfully, no one mentioned it afterwards. And I went back to work, and it was all forgotten until I walked into the mess for coffee at 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning, when 30 people stood up and turned around and screamed "Tasty," and it's just stuck from there. That's the annoying thing. There's people at HSBC, and I'm not joking now, who don't know my real name. They think I'm called Tasty.
Right.
How does Dave? How does can you tell the viewers how that nickname incorporates into what you refer to as health and tasty?
Yeah, well, bus journeys. On a bus journey, a couple of the guys were sort of taking the mick out of me, going, "Oh, he's health and tasty." So the next bus journey, I got my own back on them and actually wore all the PPE, the glasses, the hard hat, the high vi, with health and tasty written on it, and went around punishing people for bad and unsafe acts that they play. And of course, rugby is not a very safe game, so anyone I wanted to fine, I could. There was an excuse for me. It was great, good fun.
It was down to your. It was down to your discretion.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I have enacted that role once in Beccs, and there's plenty of time for me to do it again in the future, and I'm sure I will.
Mm. Yeah, because I'd never actually experienced that, and I think we were on the coach back from a final when we played over in Canterbury, and I just remember
it was Speed. It was the KCH. It was the KCH final, the 82-0 one.
Yeah, it was. And I just remember, Sweets. Like, obviously, I knew you very well at this point, and I just remember you standing up. You had like a high vis on, you had all the stuff on, and you just had this big bottle of gin. I think you might have even had like a little mouthpiece on it, and I was like, "What is he?"
Yeah,
doing?
you know the optics.
The optics.
Yeah, that was it. The optic. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was a mouthpiece or an optic. And yeah, you just went around fining everyone for absolutely any reason. I don't even. I can remember you coming up to me and saying, I can't actually remember what you got up to in the game, but I'm sorry, you're gonna have to drink some of this gin.
I remember it was a proper crappy gin as well. But then also there was some random stuff floating about, like there was a bottle of Cinzano that got put onto it, and it just kept going and going and going. So, but very good memory. Very good memory.
Yeah, good stuff. Health and tasty will be back.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I do not doubt it. But so tasty. Moving on to what is described as maybe the more enjoyable part of our podcast. It's story time. In the break, you did ask us. You said you were struggling to decide between a playing or a drinking. So you opted for both. Which would tickle your fancy? Which would you like to go for first? Remember, no names necessary.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got so many stories. Most of them involve Messer. Oh, did I say Messer? No, I didn't. No, I'm joking. I'll let you off this time, Messer. But yeah, no, I've got one particular story which didn't directly involve me, but it's a tour story. Okay, my non-playing story is a tour story, and I love tours. As you know, it doesn't directly involve me. And I'm not going to mention any names, but this goes to the olden days when I first started playing. It's a story I love. One of the guys, I'll mention his nickname because I don't think people know him, is called Dopey. Now, Dopey was basically blind without his glasses. He couldn't see more than 2 foot. Anyway, Dopey was sharing a room with X. We'll call him X. Dopey and X on tour. And they go out to the nightclub, and halfway through the evening, Dopey comes up to X and says, "Look, I'm really sorry. I think I've overdone it. I'm going to leave and go home." Fine, no problems. So the inevitable happened at the end of the evening. X had met a young lady and persuaded her to come back to the hotel room for a game of intense Monopoly. So on opening the door, walking into the room, it was all dark, and Mr. X had forgotten that Dopey was in there. "Oh no," he said. So he turned to the girl and said, "Look, my mate's in there." And she said, "No, it's all right. We'll carry on. We'll be quiet." And so he'd gone in, and there you picture this. It's a room with 2 single beds, and on one of the beds, there is Dopey outstretched with his arms akimbo and his legs akimbo, hanging out the bed, his head tilted towards Mr. X's single bed, fast asleep, out cold. So anyway, Mr. X and the girl started their game Monopoly. I think Mr. X didn't buy any properties all evening and got smashed and ended up being one of the poorest guys in London. She won, hands down. And at the end of the story, end of their Monopoly game, she says to him, "So how's your mate? Is he still asleep? So Mr. Rex looks round, and there is Dopey in exactly the same position, arms and legs outstretched, hanging out the bed, head tilted towards Mr. X's bed. But this time, he had his glasses on. So he put his glasses on during that.
Oh, that is quality. Did Dopey ever get pulled up on that?
I think numerous times. Yeah, a number of times.
Dave, Casey, just to check, did anyone ever clarify that Dopey wasn't the banker?
Yeah, good point.
Well, don't pass go, don't get 200.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Go straight to jail.
Straight to jail.
Okay, so that's my first. That's the non-playing story. And I've got a playing story, if that's all right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Again, this is going back to the 80s sometime, or just after, I believe. It was a game out on the first team pitch against Dartfordians. I was hooking, and I remember Nick Haler was the loose head alongside me. The rest is a bit hazy. Dartfordians had this. Well, he's an infamous guy, a tight head, a black tight head. He must have been 6'2", and that was wide. I mean, he was a very big boy. His name was Frankie. He was an ex-Great Britain wrestling champion. He was infamous, very, very dirty player, but really strong prop. Anyway, we're on their line, scrummage, and we've got the nudge on. And Nick's playing against Frankie, and we're getting nearer and nearer the line. And all of a sudden, Frankie's got hold of me and Nick round the head in a guillotine chop, headlock takedown move. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is tough. Just before I lost consciousness, which was approaching the line, I thought, I know, I'll get in with my uppercut circus punch myself. You know, I did watch World of Sports, so I know some wrestling moves. So I gave him a little uppercut and immediately dropped to my knees. Thinking, oh, I'll stay down here, keep out of the way. Of course, the scrum at this stage had broken up. Nick was facing Frankie. Frankie was screaming at Nick. Nick was denying all knowledge that it was him, which Frankie completely ignored. The next thing was a whir of punches. Frankie absolutely battered Nick. I looked up and could see it all going on from where I was on my knees and thought, I'll stay here for another minute or so. And just as it was all broken up and the ref got involved and got control, I stood up and, you know, Nick's never forgiven me for that moment. But Frankie did get his own back later during the game. I think he realised it was me, because I do remember him doing an off the ball around the back of a ruck, off the ball. A crossbody cartwheel splash and gave me a big shine. But that's what rugby was like in those days. It's
I was going to say, back in the day when you could get away with it.
Had an edge.
Very politically put.
I'd love to see a picture of Frankie. I wonder if we could find a picture of Frankie somehow.
I'd love to have him on the pod.
Yeah, I bet we could. I've got a horrible feeling he's since died. I've got a horrible feeling. Nothing to do with Nick Haler getting his own back. But I think, sadly. But yeah, I'm sure we could. I'll have a look.
God, let's hope.
Please do. Please do.
Poor guy. Oh, yeah, well, thanks for those two very good stories. You know, hopefully one day we'll get to a point where we can say names and, you know, we can start pointing the fingers back, but we're still on that ride of family friendly, PG, not throwing anyone under the bus, but one day, would you reckon?
Yeah, thank you. Two fantastic stories. Greatly appreciated.
No problems.
Big time.
So we'll talk through some other bits and bobs going on at the club just at the moment. A few dates for your diaries before we finish up, lads. So first and foremost, we've got two ready for rugby matches coming up against Beckenham. We are away to them this Saturday on the 17th. I believe we're trying to get, is it three men's sides out and 2 vet sides at the moment?
Mm.
Is that correct? Yeah, hoping to get some to get full sides full of those. And then the return leg of those fixtures against Beckenham will be at home on the 31st of October of this month. And that is a sort of big club reopening, isn't it? Because there's been some works going on at the club. And obviously that's in turn sort of affected us, and which is why we've sort of had to carry on doing our Zoom and YouTube podcast, obviously. So yeah, we just want to try and build up a little bit of hype for the 31st. Really try and encourage people to get down and support the club, and hopefully be as close as we can to sort of a regular, normal feeling fixture, I guess. Would you say, gents?
Yeah, certainly exciting. It's not quite going to be full contact in the league against Beckenham, but you know, it'd be nice to get back to a bit of rugby with a bit of competitive edge, you know. And like you said, very important, club reopening, just like all other small businesses, has been very affected by the COVID-19 crisis. So, you know, if you're listening, guys, think about coming down on the 31st, have a couple of beers, you know, and start putting some money back into the club.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's not forget our rivalry against Beckenham as well. We've had a local rivalry with them for years. Now we're back in the same league. It's going to be great fun, and a good night. And what better way to put back into the club than to come and support? Brilliant.
Exactly.
I wanted to see the bits and bobs that have been refurbed. I've seen a couple of pictures. The inside's looking fantastic. So yeah, just be lovely to get you know, a few people back down there again, and as Speed and we both said, just support the club and get a few quid behind the bar. So absolutely, please, Saturday the 31st of October, date for your diary. Well, gents, we've reached the end.
How's your first, you know, introduction to radio? I mean, I'm pretty honoured. Fog. You know, this is the first radio involvement of someone who was actually around when radio was invented. That's pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, guys, it was my honour. It was brilliant. I just loved it, and I just want to thank you two for doing this, because you know, there's so many different ways that you know, you're now raising awareness about the club and advertising the club in different ways as well. So well done, guys. It's really good. I know it takes a lot of effort to do this. You know, the background stuff we've done here, and you do it every week. So well done. Big hand to you two. Thanks. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
Much appreciated.
To be honest, Dave, the honour is all ours. So we really appreciate you coming on. We've had a great time. And just thank you for giving us a bit of insight, and hopefully nice for just, you know, to reminisce a little bit and just have a general chit chat. So thank you so much, really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you, guys.
Completely echo what Fog said. 10 episodes, here's to 10 more, and then who knows.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, guys and girls, you've been listening to the Beccs Rugby Pod. I'm Speedy.
I'm Foggy.
Thank you very much to our very special guest, Mr. Dave Sweetings. We will see you next week, guys. Have a great week.